Hello, hello. So, have you ever noticed how quickly your mind can turn against you? Maybe something happens, someone doesn't text you back, you make a mistake, you feel left out, and then suddenly your inner dialogue sounds wild, like there's something wrong with me, I'm not good enough, nobody really likes me. And before you know it, you are stuck in a spiral of negative self talk. So today, I want to talk about why we talk negatively to ourselves, where that voice actually comes from, and how we can begin changing our relationship to it. Negative self talk is usually judgment. One of the most important things to understand is this: negative self talk is often judgment, it's evaluation, right? So we are constantly assessing ourselves, how we look, how we performed, whether people like us, whether we belong. And those judgments quickly become stories. And these judgments, they come from, well, a lot of these judgments, they're not actually rooted in truth, right? So they often come from past experiences that we've had, societal influences, scarcity thinking, or voices that we've internalized over time. So maybe we grow up hearing criticism. Maybe we learned that our worth really depended on achievement or appearance or approval. Maybe we live in a culture that constantly tells us we're not enough. Over time, these messages become part of our internal dialogue. So it may not even be your voice necessarily. This is something I talk about a lot in my book, Talk to Yourself Like a Buddhist. And sometimes the negative self talk we hear isn't truly our voice. It can be like a younger version of ourselves, right? A past version of ourselves, but it's not us now. Or it's someone else's voice that we've carried into adulthood. And identifying where these beliefs come from, they help us loosen their grip. So, because of instead of automatically believing the thought, we start to observe it. So, a practice for working with self talk, really, when negative self talk shows up, instead of getting pulled into it, we can begin asking questions. The process looks something like this. First, we ask ourselves, what judgment or evaluation am I making? Then we say, what story am I telling myself because of that judgment? And finally, what do I actually know to be true? The last question is really incredibly grounding because often the story is much bigger than the actual facts. We are exaggerating the story. We are making a lot of assumptions about the story. We don't know any of that story to be true. So, for an example, I worked with a client who saw on social media that lots of her friends were gathering in her hometown, but nobody had invited her. And immediately her self talk became, nobody wants to spend time with me. They don't really like me. There must be something wrong with me. And very quickly, she spiraled into a painful narrative about being unwanted and undesirable. And this is totally normal, right? We all have these moments. But when she slowed down and became aware of her self talk, she started to question it. What judgment was she making? That not being invited meant she was unwanted or people didn't like her, right? And what story was she telling herself? She was telling herself that she wasn't valued or liked. And then she asked, what do I actually know to be true? And the truth was, she didn't actually know why she wasn't invited, right? There were many possible explanations, but in her mind had immediately moved into self judgment and scarcity, probably based off of past experiences, just scarcity thinking, right? Because negative self talk is often rooted in scarcity. Scarcity says there isn't enough love, there isn't enough belonging. If I'm rejected, it means I'm not worthy. And from that place, the mind starts searching for evidence that we're not enough, and it will find it. But awareness interrupts that cycle. So mindfulness changes the relationship in this moment, right? The goal isn't to never have negative thoughts, that would be impossible. The goal is to notice them sooner, to hear the judgment, to recognize the story, and then gently come back to what's true. And this is where mindfulness becomes so powerful because mindfulness helps us observe our thoughts instead of becoming them. So, just because a thought appears in your mind doesn't mean that thought is true. And just because you've repeated a judgment many times before doesn't make it reality. You can learn to question these stories that you tell yourself. And that's what I really invite you to start doing when you're noticing your negative self talk, because that changes the way you speak to yourself and ultimately the way that you relate to others. So this week, pay attention to your negative self talk or just your self talk in general, especially moments where your mind really jumps into judgment or self blame. And instead of automatically believing the thoughts and following it down that path, pause, ask these questions. What judgment am I making? Right? What's the story that I'm creating here based off of that judgment? And what do I really know to be true? And then come back to that, right? You ask the questions and you come back to, what do I know to be true? Not what am I imagining unskillfully, right? If you would like more support with self talk and mindful communication, I go much deeper into these practices in my book, Talk to Yourself Like a Buddhist, along with my audio courses and trainings, which I will link below. And if you notice a recurring pattern in your own self talk, you're welcome to share it in the comments. I'm really wanting to start, responding to some of these upcoming questions and upcoming videos. So thank you for being here, and I will talk with you all next week.